Okay guys, what we want to do now is we want to take a look at a new task. Now remember, we focused on the p-bit. Now the p-bit said to propagate. Now what that means is that when a update or a Type 7 LSA arrives on an ABR that has been designated as the translator, it is going to take that and it's going to translate it into a Type 5 LSA and it's going to send it on. Now what I want to do is I want to look at this from the perspective of modifying that behavior. So the first thing I want to look at is I'm going to go into R4 from the perspective of Wireshark, and I want to look at G1, and we want to see that P bit. One more time. I want to see the propagate bit that has been set. Now the easiest and fastest way to do that is going to be to reinitiate the connection from R5. So I will say clear IP OSPF process, and I will actually, you know what, the easiest way to do it would be to reinitiate it. So I'll say no config T interface LO 1000, and I'll shut the interface off, and let's see if I can just force a single update, and then I'll no shut the interface, and we'll wait for a couple of hellos to go through. And then I'll no shut the interface, and then that should be the Type 7 specifically that gets sent. There's the update and the acknowledgement. Let's take a look at that update, and let's see if it is indeed a Type 7 LSA. That's the hello packet. I grabbed the wrong one. Yep, I sure enough did. So let me grab this thing, drag it down. Let's see if I can get that update right there, and say update packet, and it is a Type 7 LSA. Now what I want to do is I want to look at this Type 7 LSA, and that means I'm going to drag the ASCII text down, and then what I want to do is look under the options, and what we're going to see is the p-bit says to propagate. Now with that being said and that being implemented, what we want to do is we want to make certain that it is indeed being propagated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back across and take a look at R6, and I'm going to see if it's in my routing table. Show IP route 5.5.5.5, and we see that it is. And if I do ping 5.5.5.5, I should have the ability to be able to reach across and actually hit it. Now, what if I did not want it to be advertised? Now, the one way of saying not to actually re-originate it as a Type 5 LSA at the translator ABR is going to say to keep it in the NSSA area itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and say that I want to do redistribute subnets, and one of my options, if I'm in the right context, which I'm not, one of my options will be to router OSPF1 and then up arrow till I get to that redistribution process. One of my options is going to be able to say NSSA only. So that's what I'm going to do, NSSA only. And now what I'll do is that actually initiated a new update. Let's take a look at that update. All right, from this update, notice it now says the propagate bit is not set. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take a look at it from the perspective of R6. And let's see if I still have reachability. And we're going to see that I don't. Now the main reason behind the fact that I do not have reachability is the fact that I'm not learning a Type 5. Show IP OSPF database. And let's go ahead and say external. And what's happening here is you'll note that I see absolutely nothing. Now that is exactly what I would expect to happen. However, I do want to go back to CSR3, and I want to say show run section router, and I want to look at the fact that this device still says that I want it to generate the translation. Now, this is a way of being able to hardwire the translation when the p-bit is set to 1. Right now the p-bit is set to 0 in our current configuration, and that directly translates to the fact that even though I have the translate Type 7 always feature enabled, that it can't translate it because it is not able to be propagated. Now I'm going to remove that syntax and return the configuration back to the way I want it. So what I'll do is I'll just say redistribute tst do show run section router. Let's see if it actually did what I thought it was going to do, and it did. Now if I come back over here, I should actually have an external prefix generated when the time comes. I'm just waiting for the process. Actually, did it actually, I didn't see it actually update. Redistribute connected subnets, NSSA-ONLY, it's still there. It just reorganized it. So I'm going to have to do the no redistribute connected. And then what I'm going to do is put the original syntax back in without the NSSA. Now do show run section router. And let's see if the syntax is correct. Now let's see if I have a type 5 being generated. There it is. Do I have reachability? Yes, I do. So with that being said, the question now is well, where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from the device that has the generate always. It's actually overriding the router ID behavior for the translator election. Now, when we also look at this, keep in mind, remember, we're still load balancing. So if I come over here and say show IP route for 5.5.5.5, we're going to see that I still have two paths. But the reason I have these two paths has more to do with the FA than anything else. Let's look at the forward address. So in this instance, I'm going to say show IP OSPF database, and I want to look at the external prefix, and we're going to say, hey, we want to get to this address. Now, one of my problems or one of my situations here may be the fact that I don't want to load balance. Let's say I wanted specifically to pick a given path. Now what I've done is I've gone into my topology and I've hardwired R3 to act as the translator. And as translator, it's actually taking the forwarding address and it's applying it inside of the type 5 LSA that's generating. Let's see if we can modify that behavior. Config T, router OSPF1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire syntax where it says always, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say suppress the FA. And I'm going to hit enter. Okay, now let's see if this modifies or changes anything. Now, notice it didn't send out any new messages, but I'm monitoring the interface going towards R5. But let's see if this did do anything, or make any differences from the perspective of R1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show IP OSPF external, database external, and what you're going to see here is just notice now it no longer has the forwarding address. Now when I take a look at my show IP route configuration for 5.5.5.5, what we're going to see is it's only using R3. Now the reason being is this looking at this as the source for that E2 update that we received. It's a type external 2, so it's a external type 2 prefix. And right now what it's doing is it's actually following the shortest path to be able to get to 0003. So if I do a trace route to 5.5.5.5, the only place that it can go is going to be through R3. Now if I remove that syntax from R3, so if I come over here and just say no router OSPF, it's easier to just do it this way, no area 2345 NSSA, and then I'll say specifically to leave everything alone. So now R2 and R3 should be configured the same. Do show IP or do show run pipe section router. We're going to see that it's just a regular NSSA area. The router ID is all twos. If I come down to CSR3, do show run pipe section router, we're going to see in this instance it's not a SSA. So how did I manage that? IP OSPF database, or show IP OSPF neighbors. Down, so that usually says do show IP interface brief. Means the interface is usually turned off. That's not the case. It's not a stub. Do show run section router. And sure enough, it's not a stub. So I'll say area 2345 NSSA. And my pairing should come back up. Show IP OSPF neighbors. Forward 2, forward 3. Show IP OSPF database. We are learning the type 5 from R2 because it has a higher router ID. And if I take a look at the contents of it, show IP OSPF database, and I look for the external prefixes, we can see again it is sending this value. And if I say show IP route 218.3.155, we're going to see that I am indeed going to be able to load balance. Keeping in track, if I just do the show IP route 4.5.5.5.5, it's resolving to R2 for both paths because the R2 is where that translation is taking place. So just keep in mind the fact that the P bit handles the ability of a LSA type 7 to be translated into a type 5. The rule is going to be that the translation is going to take place on the ABR that has the highest router ID by default, but as you can see, we have the capability of being able to quote-unquote hardwire that process. Now, there are other ways to filter and to block things when it comes to dealing with OSPF and how OSPF behaves in these NSSA areas, but I'm going to leave that for your CCIE study preparations, and I'm going to go ahead and make the decision to move on and discuss some of the more advanced topics. And that means I really think I need to go through the blueprint one more time and find out what we still have kind of dangling out there. So this is Terry Vinson. I'll see you guys in that video.